Hey guys, how's it going? My name is Aakash Singh. I am a software engineer, and in this video we'll be looking at some Python programs which are generally necessary for your class 11th preparations. And once you do these Python programs, I think you would be able to progress to your class 12th and do more problems in Python language. So before we begin, let's just look at what are the things we are going to cover today. हम लोग यहाँ पर आज sequence type of Python problems देखेंगे. There are multiple type of Python problems. One can be associated with mathematics. Some are pattern type. कहीं पर आप strings या फिर कोई और data types use कर रहे हो, and कहीं पे calculations होती हैं. In today's session, we'll be focusing more on the sequence type. For example, you have to create a sequence like this. So these type of the problems जो आप देखते हो आपके examinations में, हम लोग सिर्फ ये cover करेंगे, and in the upcoming videos we'll be covering the next type of problems. Okay, so let's begin with the session by talking about a few things. Now, I have been coding since my 9th grade. It might be possible कि आप लोग उससे पहले से coding कर रहे हो या फिर आपने recently coding start किया है. So what I generally see in students is that they directly go on to write a Python program as soon as they encounter a problem. Now, there are a couple of steps. जैसे आपने कोई भी question देखा Python program का, you don't have to directly write the code. There are certain steps that you need to follow. First and the most important thing about writing a Python program is that you have to focus on the logic. There can be multiple logics like अगर आप for loop use कर रहे हो, अगर आप dictionary use कर रहे हो, अगर आप if else statement use कर रहे हो, you have to decide which approach that you want to take. Second is after you have decided what logic you want to apply, you have to write a pseudocode. Pseudocode basically means you have to write in your own language. Now this becomes necessary because once you write a program in your own language, you will be able to understand how the program is working. ऐसा नहीं है आपने directly Python language में कुछ लिखा है and you are still debugging because your program doesn't work. So over here you also define your variables. For example, if you're using a for loop, हम लोग generally I use करते हैं. अगर आप इनपुट्स ले रहे हो, अगर आप आउटपुट्स ले रहे हो, आपको वो सब नेमिंग कन्वेंशंस यूज करने होते हैं. यू हैव टू डिसाइड बिफोर हैंड, नॉट वाइल कोडिंग अ प्रॉब्लम. एंड द थर्ड वन इज द ड्राई रन. सो आफ्टर you have written the code in your own language, you take an example. Let's say I've written a program to add two numbers. I take two examples of 4 plus 3 and see if my program is executing this in the same way on a piece of paper and not a software. Finally, once you check all these steps, the fourth part becomes writing a code. Now, when you're writing a code, make sure the first thing that you need to do while writing a code is get your answer correct. You don't need to be efficient. अगर आपका program 30 seconds, 1 minute में भी run कर रहा है, it does not matter till the time it's giving you correct output. You're in school, class 11th, class 12, it doesn't matter much what is the speed of your program. What matters is how accurate your program is. Okay, so with these things, please remember, make a note of it. You can take a screenshot. Let's begin with the session by talking about a program to print sum of natural numbers from 1 to 10. Now, this might seem a very simplistic program. अगर आप on paper इसको solve करने के लिए try करोगे, you just have to write the 10 digits, sum all of them, and just get the answer. But in Python, let's try to make use of the steps which we decided. First of all, we need to decide the logic. Okay, so printing the sum of first 10 natural numbers should look like this. So the logic I will be using here is मैं एक एक करके सारे numbers लूंगा and I will keep on adding to a main variable. I can just say I have a sum where I will store all these values and I do this 1 plus 2 plus 3 till 10. Please note there are multiple ways to solve this problem, but I will be using a simple approach. Okay, so now we have this. Does this remind you of anything? It is a sequence, right? And generally sequence में हम लोग for loop use करते हैं. So let's try to see what kind of a solution you get using for loop. So for I in, now I want to create this sequence. I want I to take all the values from 1 to 10 because I want to join them together and sum them. So I will use range function here. And range function के बाद I start with 1 and I end with 11. Remember this n-1 range function को आपको पढ़ना पड़ेगा थोड़ा इसके लिए. And then what I'm trying to do is, as soon as I takes all of these values, जैसे I की value हुई 1, then 2, then 3, every time I am adding it to this variable sum. Now you might say, why am I writing sum 2 times? Let's do a dry run. What does this program do? Okay, so I is first taking the value of 1 and value of sum is initially 0. Let's assume that. So once I start with the program, I will be 1. Sum becomes sum is equal to sum plus I, which means I am adding 1 to this, which becomes 1. Now the first loop is complete. Going on to the next part, जहाँ पर हम लोग 2 लेते हैं. Okay, now again I becomes 2. What are we doing in this statement is, again हमारी initial value of sum was 1. We are just adding 2 to it. So it becomes 3. Now if you look slowly and steadily, once 10 iterations have been completed, our sum will store the entire answer to this part, or actually this one. So on paper, we are correct with the logic. Let's try to do this in a Python compiler. So for this, I'll be using a Jupyter notebook. You can use any of the other compilers or softwares that you might be using. So first of all, we are creating a variable sum, जहाँ पर मैं 0 store कर रहा हूँ because initially the answer is 0. Then I use a for loop. For I can take I can take X, I can take A, whatever you feel like. In range 1 to 11. Now I am adding all the values of I to this variable sum each time it is iterated. I hope you are getting the point. We need to add all the values of I together. That's why we are storing it in the sum. So this is how your program looks like, and let's try to execute it. So we get an answer 55. So this was a simple approach of solving this question. We'll have a look at a similar question जहाँ पर हम लोग 1 to 10 print नहीं कर रहे हैं. Instead of 10, we are talking about a variable n which can take any value. Now the difference in the previous one and this one is that we have to take the input of n from the user. Earlier हम लोग कोई भी input नहीं ले रहे थे, but over here we are taking the input from the user. So this won't look very different. The only difference would be here. It should look like this. Now इसके लिए जो range function आएगा, it would look something like this. That is the only change that you need to do in this question. So in order to make this easier, I'll be just copying and pasting it, and instead of the 11, I'll be writing n plus 1. So do you get the logic? And I also need to input the value of n. So let's take n as 15. So we get the answer like this. So now, once you understand how you need to sum all the digits together using a for loop, you will be able to do any kind of problem. जैसे हम लोगों ने अभी 10 तक किया, we can also make it n. And let's have a look at printing only the even numbers, or maybe printing a multiplication table. So this is a question जहाँ पर हम लोग को एक पूरा table print out करना है. Earlier in second or third standard, we used to like write multiplication tables. I hope you have done the same. But there was an easier way to do it if you knew Python. So let's say my table should look like this. I am taking the number 7. If at any point of time अगर आपको problem solve करने में difficulty होती है, I always tell my students that take an example. I want to print the table of 7. It should look like this. Right? So now what should be the sequence here? What is the number that is continuously changing जो आप for loop का variable ले सकते हो? Yes, you are right. So 1, 2, 3 till 10. This is the range that you will be working with. Again, you know how to create this range using the range function from 1 to 11. The input from the user, I am taking n, is 7. It becomes very easy once we have drawn a diagram. So let's try to write a program which does this. So for I in range 1 to 11, now I just want to print n. This is the multiplication sign. Then I will be multiplying with I, and finally equal to sign and n into I. So n into I would be the answer to each of your lines. So the first line would be 7 into 1. That is your answer. Next would be 7 into 2, 7 into 3, and so on. So let's quickly do this on the Python compiler, Jupyter Notebook. So n is 7. और I in range 1 to 11 because हम लोग first 10 multiple से print कर रहे हैं. First 7, which means we are printing n into I. So let's try to execute this. So this is the answer, which is right. So these problems can be done in multiple different ways, but we are going forward with the most easiest and the most simple solution. Now, if I write 17 instead of 7, you will get the table of 17. So I hope till now you were able to understand the sequence part of for programming. Now let's write a program to print the sum of squares of the first 100 natural numbers. Now initially when you look at this, it seems like a mathematics problem. Yes, it is a mathematics problem, but अगर आप इसको paper पे solve करने के लिए try करोगे, it becomes quite lengthy. Right? You have formulas for calculating squares of numbers, but using Python, it becomes very easy using for loop. So first of all, let's see what we want to achieve. We want to say 1 square plus 2 square. So do you agree that we want this sum? The squares of the first 100 natural numbers. Now if you see, यहाँ पर जो iterable है, जो बार बार values लेने वाला है, variable, for that the range should look like this. So how do we create this range? Using the range function from 1 till 101. So for I in range, we have the range. Now I just want to print the sum. So in order to store the sum, we are taking a variable जो initially 0 है, क्योंकि हम लोग जब तक I की values iterate नहीं करेंगे तब तक sum में भी हम लोग कुछ store नहीं कर सकते. Sum plus. Now in the first question, we were just directly storing the value of I. But over here, we do not want to store the value of I, but I squared. So it should look like this. Now there are multiple ways of writing the square. आप power use कर सकते हो, आप दो बार I को multiply कर सकते हो. Over here, I'm using the double asterisk notation. which tells you that after these two asterisks, आपकी power आ रही है. And finally, print sum. Right, so let's try this problem. Okay, so we have a variable sum as 0. We have created a range from 1 to 100. Now we'll be storing the sum of squares in a single variable called sum. And after the loop is complete, I'll be just printing the value of sum. So executing this program, we get the answer 338350. Now you can change the variables. आप यहाँ पर चीजें change कर सकते हो to see how it affects your answer. But this is how you can create a program जहाँ पर आप sum of squares find out कर रहे हो, सिर्फ sum find out कर रहे हो, creating a table. Now all this looks quite easy. It is actually easy because once you do all these 10 problems in this video, I think आपका जो understanding of for loops है, it will get much better. So let's have a look at the next problem now and see what it is. Write a program to print the Fibonacci series. So you have heard about Fibonacci series. It looks like this. Now each term after this will be the sum of previous two terms. So 0 plus 1 is 1. The next term would be 1 plus 1, which is 2. 3, 5, 8, 13. Now this is the Fibonacci series up till 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 terms. For 8 terms. Now we also define Fibonacci series like this. So in a Fibonacci series, f of n, which means any number at the nth position, is the sum of number at n minus 1 position, which is just 1 behind, plus f of n minus 2, which is 2 positions behind. So this is what's happening in this case, right? So if I want to see f of 3, so these 1, 2, 3, 4. So f of 3 would be f of 2 plus f of 1. Previous two digits ka sum, which is 1. So using this, we can create a program to print the Fibonacci series. Let's see how to do that. All right. So first of all, we know the first two digits of the Fibonacci series are 0 and 1. Let's call them A is 0 and B is 1. The next term automatically should be A plus B. Right? A plus B would be 1. Now after this, what happens? For the fourth term, our B becomes this and our A becomes this. If you look at it, every time you want to create a new digit in the Fibonacci sequence, we have to shift the values of A and B to the next positions. Now यहाँ पर, let me just clear this once. All right. So now it would be better to understand. We have A, we have B. Initially A is 0 and initially B is 1. We want to find out the next number. So the next number would always be A plus B, which is 1. Now after we do this, we need to change the values of A and B. Now A becomes 1, B becomes 1. What should the next term be? It should be the sum of these, right? 1 plus 1, which is 2. So once we reach this point, again, we need to shift the digits. What should B become? B is the digit just before our last part, which means it is 2. And A becomes this number, which is 1. So the next digit automatically becomes 1 plus 2 and 3. Now again, if you carry forward, your B is 3, your A is 2. And the next number becomes 5. So if you look closely, every time we print the sum of A and B, the value of A and B themselves are changing. So how do we write this program? First of all, we store the value of A as 0, B as 1. Now what we want to do is we want to print A, we want to print B, right? Because यहाँ पर कुछ change नहीं होगा. After 0 and 1, we need to start printing the sequence. So after this, it should look like for I in range. Now let's say I want to print the Fibonacci series for 10 terms. Okay, this is what the question is asking. Now out of those 10 terms, 2 are already present. So how many terms are left to print? 8, right? So for that purpose, I will be just writing for I in range 8, right? It will repeat 8 times. For I in range 8, print A plus B. Is this part clear? We need to print A plus B because that's the next term in the sequence of the Fibonacci series. After we print this, what was the next step? We have to change the values of A and we have to change the value of B. So what should A become and what should B become? So A becomes B and B becomes A plus B. Do you get this? Let's say I want to print the next term. Next term is 8, right? So B की value है 5 and A की value है 3. Why was this so? In the previous part, this was A plus B and this was B. So now your A becomes B and your B becomes A plus B. I hope this is not too confusing, but if you look at this, we are doing it simultaneously. हम लोग इसको one by one नहीं कर सकते हैं because if I change the value of A to B first, then जो next value है B is equal to A plus B, it will have new values of A, which we do not want. So let's try to execute this program and see what is the answer that we get. So we want to print the first 10 terms, right? So that's why I've written n equal to 10. The value of A is 0, value of B is 1, as we discussed, because they are the first 2 digits in the sequence. Then I write print A and print B. The use of end statement is that I do not want the cursor to go to the next line. I want the cursor to stay in the same line. Okay, so that is the reason we are saying end this statement with a space. And then we get the for loop, which says for I in range n minus 2, because 2 digits are already printed. We print A plus B and then we change the values of A and B. While changing the values of A and B, please make note you have to do it simultaneously and not one by one. So after that, this is the program for Fibonacci series and this is what you get. If I make it 100, so you will get something like this. There are multiple ways to solve a Fibonacci series problem. One of them is recursion. I don't think that's in your syllabus, but using a for loop, this is the simplest way that you can achieve that. So moving on to the next set of problems, जहाँ पर हम लोग थोड़े mathematically inclined problems देखेंगे. We need to find a sequence which looks like this. So now initially you can directly have a look and see that it looks like the table of 5. But the only case is that minus and plus signs are alternating. So initial thoughts, 5 into 1, then 5 into minus 2, then 5 into 3, then 5 into, all right, so this is opposite, minus 1 plus 2, minus 3 plus 4, minus 5. Okay, so can you see the pattern here? The odd digits have a negative power and the even digits have a positive power. So we know the sequence that we want to create. यहाँ पर हम लोग 5 तो हर नंबर के साथ मल्टीप्लाई कर रहे हैं, but that number is changing from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we can say for I in range 1 till n plus 1, अगर मुझे 10 digits print करने हैं, so I would just say n plus 1. Now the next thing we need to do is we need to check if the I is odd or even. For that purpose we use this. If I percentage 2 means if the remainder of I when it's divided by 2 equals 0, which means it's even, then we say print 5 into I, else print 5 into minus I. Do you get the logic? Let's try to understand it using the program. So for I in range if I is even, अगर I even है तो we do not need the negative sign, but if I is odd we need the negative sign. So checking the even condition, 5 into I, and we just say end by this. But if I is odd, we don't need to specify the condition here, and always remember to mark the colons. Print 5 into minus I, right? Okay, so we just need to input the value of n. Now value of n at the beginning, let's try it as 10. So for this we get a sequence minus 5, 10, minus 15, 20, minus 25, and so on. So in these problems, always remember it's a Python problem. Second, the first part is that you need to understand the mathematics behind it. Looking at the next problem, we need to find the sum of this series. Again, initially you just need to simplify the series. Now we don't need to simplify much here. We just know that it is 1 by n cube. So it should look like this. What is the iterable here? हम लोग को कौन सी range create करनी है? We want to create range 1 till n plus 1, right? So for I in range this, so we need to find the sum again. Create the variable sum equal to 0, where we'll be storing all the values. Sum is equal to sum plus. Now 1 by, so you need to write it the way Python understands it. I raised to the power 3. Okay, so let's try to execute this program. I'm copying a few things from here to make things easier. I raised to the power 3. So right now I need to initialize sum, because sum अगर मैं वेरिएबल क्रिएट ही नहीं करूंगा तो यहाँ पर कुछ स्टोर नहीं होने वाला, you will get an error. And after that I also need to print the value of sum. So this is the answer which you get. Now easily you have created a program like this जहाँ पर आप sequence already decide कर चुके हो, and you just need to simplify it so that Python understands it. Looking at the next program to print the sum of the series. Okay, again you have two inputs here. The first input is the number of terms. The second input would be x, right? ये आपको दोनों चीजें यूजर से इनपुट लेनी है. So first we need to understand that, and the output would be s. S is basically the sum, right? So what is the iterable here? If I want to simplify this in easier terms, I can say that s is x plus 0 plus x raised to 1 plus x raised to 2 till x raised to n. Now what is the iterable? What is the variable that continuously changes? That is this power. So we say range from, now over here the range is not from 1, it is directly from 0, because x raised to 0 is 1. So we say we say 0 till n plus 1 for I in range. Now we want to store the sum is equal to sum plus x raised to I. Do you understand this? So the first time the loop iterates, it would be sum plus x raised to 0, then it will be x raised to 1, then it will be x raised to 2. We have to input from the user. I'm just taking these values, n is 10 and x is 5. So let's try the program. Also we need to create the sum variable जहाँ पर हम लोग 0 से initialize करते हैं. So for I in range, we have to start from 0 till n plus 1, storing all of the values in the sum variable like this. So everything is clear in this. Let's try to execute it. So this is the value which we are getting, and I think that's right. So ये आपका sequence था, and this is how you create using a for loop. So write a program to print sum of the series. Now it is a similar series to the previous one. Can you notice the difference? जहाँ पर हम लोगों ने पहले भी देखा था, odd numbers had negative signs and even numbers had positive signs. Over here, a similar kind of case. यहाँ पर if we start with 0, x equal to 0 minus x raised to 1 plus x raised to 2, x raised to 3. So each of the odd numbers has negative values. So let's try to create this program for I in range. What is the iterable? Again, from 0 till n plus 1. Now we also have to check if I is even or if I is odd. If I is even, I directly store. Again, you have to initialize sum. Sum is equal to sum plus else sum is equal to sum minus, right? So let's try to do this in the Jupyter notebook. Now I'll be just copy pasting the same thing because it's kind of a similar program. The only difference is I need to check for even odd cases. If I percentage 2 is 0. Make sure that you are easily able to understand the value of this statement because it's used very commonly. And I think after you practice a couple of programs, you will be able to understand it. This and else. Else में मुझे सिर्फ एक change करना है in this statement is that I need to change the sign. So let's try to execute. This is the answer which we are getting. Okay. Looking at the next sequence, write a program to print sum of series. Now it is also again a similar kind of a program, but right now we can see that it's not starting from first of all 0. X raised to 0 nahi hai. So we can say x raised to 1 minus x raised to 2 by 2 plus x raised to 3 by 3 minus x raised to 4 by 4. Now जहाँ पर even digits हैं वहाँ पर we are getting the negative sign. And also there is additional thing, यहाँ पर आपके हर जगह denominator में भी I आ रहा है. So let's try to create the for loop again for I in range. Not from 0, it's starting from 1. Now checking if I is even. Then sum is sum minus. Now what we need to do is x raised to I, right? X raised to I, ये part आ गया आपका. And also there is a denominator again. So this is the value you should get. Again, in the else part, we are doing the same thing, but with the positive sign. So let's try to execute this program in the notebook. Now I'm just copy pasting the code because they're kind of the same program. The only thing is you need to understand, you need to make Python understand the mathematical formula that you're trying to recreate. So if I is even, we need the negative sign, right? जहाँ पर 2 है, that is negative. जहाँ पर 4 है, वहाँ पर it is negative. So automatically at the odd places, it becomes positive. Again, this entire thing comes under I. मैं यहाँ पर सिर्फ I का denominator add कर रहा हूँ. So these were the changes that were required, and also this part. It is starting from 1. Again, this program is working well. There are no errors. The next program would be a similar thing, but now instead of the denominator being a simple number, we need to find the denominator as a factorial. I hope you understand what a factorial is. 2 factorial means 1 into 2. 3 factorial means 1 into 2 into 3. 4 factorial means 1 into all these digits till 4. So this program will kind of remain same, but instead of the denominator, we need to find the factorial. But for that condition, we would have to create a separate function just to create the factorial. Why is that needed? Because you cannot directly write 2 factorial, right? You need to calculate that. So in order to calculate that, you are defining a new function. So let's directly jump into the Jupyter notebook and see what we are trying to do here. So this is the exact same problem, but यहाँ पर हम लोगों को factorial use करना है. So I hope you have seen how to create functions. So I can just write factorial of I. We have not yet defined कि factorial of I क्या करता है. Right? When I execute this, I should get the right answer. But before I execute, I need to define what this factorial is. Okay, how do we create a factorial? How do we store a factorial? First of all, okay, so let's move on to this part जहाँ पर हम लोग factorial create कर रहे हैं. In order to create a factorial, we need to create a range. लेट्स से अगर हमें 2 का फैक्टोरियल क्रिएट करना है, द रेंज इज फ्रॉम 1 till 2. If I want to create factorial of 4, the range is 1, 2, 3 and 4. So can you see what is the range that we are trying to create? That is 1 from 1 to n plus 1. So for I in range 1 to n plus 1, so initially we were storing the sum, but यहाँ पर हमें एक product store करना है, so we initialize it with 1. Product is equal to product into I. So this should give you the value of the factorial. Okay, so let's initialize product as 1, जहाँ पर हम लोग आंसर स्टोर करेंगे रेंज 1 to n plus 1. यहाँ पर n के बदले हम लोग x लेंगे because we need to find the factorial of x. So product is equal to product into the value of I, and then I just write return I. Right, so this will be giving you the value of factorial. Sorry, not I, it should be prod. Okay, so I think this should work now. So what we did in this program is we copy pasted the entire thing from the last one, but instead of the denominator, now we are replacing it by the factorial of the denominator. And in order to create the factorial, we have created a separate function which does the same thing. Right, so all these problems, if you are able to understand, then it's well and good, because अगर आपने ये सारे problem solve कर लिए, I don't think there is any other problem which you won't be able to solve. We have mathematical concepts, we have logical concepts, and in the upcoming sessions we will also look at patterns, we will look at strings. But for today, I think this was it. I hope you were able to understand most of the things present here. If you want, I can share the Jupyter Notebook codes on the Telegram group. You can find the link to the group in the bio of this video. I'll be seeing you in the next one. Till then, stay awesome. Bye-bye.